Hi, everybody. Welcome back to News Now. Pilar Arias here with you this Tuesday afternoon. It's March 20th, and I'm sitting over here wondering where this year is going. It's just flying by. Spring break for most. Easter not too far away. April 1st. Can you believe it? We were taking a look at that snow in Philadelphia, but it looks like we lost that shot. So now we're looking at rain on the other side of the country there in San Francisco. If any of you viewers are out there in San Francisco, let us know. Or the whole Bay Area. You know, we know Oakland and Napa Valley and all that up there. Thanks for watching. Okay, so while we were taking our stream break, we had a news conference in regards to, it was the Hennepin County attorney in regards to charges against a Minneapolis police officer in the shooting death of an Australian woman. Her name, Justine Diamond. So let's listen in on that now. You're watching News Now, a part of Fox10Phoenix.com. Thanks for being with us.
Minneapolis, Justine Diamond shot and killed Muhammad Noor in jail. Mike Freeman.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Freeman, Hennepin County Attorney. Today I announce that the Hennepin County Attorney's Office has filed charges of third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter against Minneapolis police officer Muhammad Noor in the shooting death of Justine Damon Ruszczyk. The original complaint was sealed by Hennepin County District Judge Todd Barnett until Officer Noor was apprehended. That occurred recently, and now for the first time, we can talk about this case. First, I want to extend my deepest sympathies, as I have personally, to the members of the Damon and Ruszczyk families. To lose a family member to violence is always retching and painful. But to lose it when she was acting as a concerned and caring citizen and at the hands of a person she called for help is inexplicable. Second, I want to extend my appreciation to the several law enforcement agencies for the hard work done in investigating the case over the last 8 months. I also want to thank the members of the grand jury who worked diligently this last 6 weeks, helping to ascertain the truth of exactly what happened on the night of July 15th, 2017. Finally, I want to thank members of the prosecution team. They guided the investigation and helped me to review the evidence and determine the appropriate charges in this case. Because the investigation was thorough, we have a nearly second-by-second understanding of what happened from the moment Ms. Damon Ruszczyk called 911 until she was fatally shot by Officer Noor 13 minutes later. Despite the fact that no body-worn cameras were operating at the time of the shooting, we know that less than a minute before firing the fatal shot, Officer Noor was sitting in the passenger seat of the police squad car. Noor had just typed into the squad car's computer code 4. That message, which went to the police dispatcher, meant that the officers had completed their investigation, were safe, and needed no assistance. According to the complaint, Officer Noor's partner, Officer Matthew Harity, was driving the squad car that night. Harity said that just 5 or 10 seconds after Noor entered code 4, Harity heard a voice, heard a thump somewhere back behind him on the squad car, and caught a glimpse of a person's head and shoulders outside his driver's side door. Harity was unable to say what the noise was, how loud it was, what the person's voice sounded like, or what the person said. Harity characterized the voice as a muffled voice or whisper. Harity said he could not see whether the person was a man or a woman, an adult or a child. Importantly, he could not see the person's hands and estimated the person was at least 2 feet away from him. Harity saw no weapons. However, Harity claimed he was startled, took his gun out of its holster, and held it against his ribcage, pointing downward. Harity said from the driver's seat he had a better vantage point to determine a threat on his side of the car than Officer Noor did in the passenger side. Officer Harity said he then heard a sound he described like a light bulb dropping onto the floor and saw a flash. Harity checked to make sure that he was not shot, then looked to his right and saw Officer Newer's right hand extend across him towards Officer Harity's open window. Officer Harity then looked out his window and saw a woman. Ms. Damon Rushek had put her hands on the wound on her left side of her abdomen and said, "I'm dying," or "I'm dead." Officer Harity then could see both of her hands, believed there was no threat, and got out of the car. Ms. Damon Rushek was far enough away from the car that Officer Harity was able to open his door and get out. Officer Newer came around from the passenger side, and Officer Harity told him to holster his gun and turn on his body camera. 1 minute and 10 seconds after getting out of the car, the officers began CPR. In the first conversation moments after the shooting, first captured on body camera footage that was now operating, Officer Harity told his supervising sergeant that they were ready to go and to clear the area and go to another call when, quote, "she came up on the side out of nowhere," end quote. Harity said, quote, "we both got spooked," end quote. And then he got his gun out. However, Officer Harity did not mention hearing a voice or hearing.
All right, everybody, this was recorded earlier. Not quite sure what the hiccup is. Let's see if everything gets back to normal here momentarily.
But there are only allegations, and Officer Newer is presumed innocent, and we must prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury. As I've said numerous times over the past few months, we would not be rushed to a decision by any outside pressures. We would take our time, use all possible tools to gather all possible evidence, and then apply the law to that evidence. Much has been written and said about my use of the grand jury after announcing almost exactly 2 years ago that I would no longer use the grand jury in deciding officer-involved shootings. I said at the time that because of the secrecy in the grand jury deliberations, the people of the county were unable to know what went into a decision, and the lack of transparency was simply not acceptable. Nor did county residents have someone to hold accountable for the grand jury decisions. I still believe that. Let me be clear. The decision to charge Officer Newers is my decision and mine alone. Many officers cooperated and came forward when we asked, but some did not. When we did not receive the cooperation we and the citizens of Hennepin County expect from the police officer to do their duty and voluntarily report what they saw and did at the scene of the shooting or in the training of the officers, it left us no other choice than to use the investigative powers of the grand jury. And we did so. We were methodical in reviewing this case for another reason. The men and women of the Minneapolis Police Department and in all police agencies in Hennepin County are brave, hardworking, and committed to our safety. We ask much of them. They go into places and encounter situations most of us never will, if we are lucky. As a result, the laws of Minnesota and the rulings of the United States Supreme Court have given police officers protections that citizens don't have. Chief among them, police officers may use deadly force in certain rare circumstances. Unless the officer was unacceptably reckless, no charges can be brought. I agree with that. We know from a study by Philip Stinson at Bowling.
All right, everybody, apologies again. This was a pre-recorded press conference. Not quite sure what happened with this tape. Let's see if it comes back. Color bars here. Here we go. Looks like they changed the camera angle on us.
The choice to charge third-degree murder and what's needed to prove that?
Yes. We charge manslaughter in the second degree and third-degree murder. 209.195 states that whoever causes the death of another by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life is guilty of murder in the third degree. Yes.
Excuse me, sir. Esme Murphy, WCCO-TV. Mr. Harity, Officer Harity here says quite clearly in this complaint that he fears for his life. Doesn't Minnesota law give wide latitude to officers if they are in that position to use deadly force?
The law does, if the belief that there is a threat to their life or to others is objectively reasonable. What we are saying here today in this complaint is that Justine was approaching the car unarmed. They couldn't even tell whether it was a male or a female, an adult or a child. And the officer, Harity, who was closer to her than Noor was, couldn't see their hands. What is the threat that requires the use of deadly force? What was the serious crime that was going on? All of which are requirements. And I think what we're saying in this charge is that Officer Noor did not act reasonably, did not act objectively reasonably, and abuse his authority to use deadly force.
Can you talk a little bit about what information you used the grand jury to obtain and why you felt in the past few days that you reached a point where you can close that process down?
Yes. We found it necessary to ask a lot of the Minneapolis police officers, because many came to the scene that night, questions about what they saw, what their body cameras looked like, etc. And also the question of the training that these two officers received. Many of the officers in the Minneapolis Police Department came forward, and the first person was Chief Arredondo, the very first. A number of officers, for reasons we do not understand, although they told us they were advised by the Police Federation not to, refused to come and answer questions. I've been privileged to have this job nearly 18 years. I've never had police officers who weren't suspects refuse to do their duty and come forward to talk to us. We therefore had no alternative than to subpoena them to a grand jury and take their testimony under oath.
Mike, is that because you've charged officers just recently for crimes allegedly committed on duty? You get a sense that that perhaps ruffled the ranks of the police union?
We've had two recent charges against police officers. One was against Officer Ryder for kicking a man who was on his hands and knees in the face, and he was found guilty by a jury of first-degree assault. The second case was Officer Hamilton, who off-duty responded to a call, came around his car around the corner, got in the middle lane of a one-way when there was a car backing up. There was some kind of impact between the two of them. He jumped out of his car 3 seconds later, fired a round at the car full of teenage civilians. We thought that was reckless, and we so charged. The jury found differently. You know, over the last, since 2010, I've charged 17 law enforcement officers here in Hennepin County for a variety of crimes. 11 of them have been Minneapolis police officers. We have either pled guilty or been found guilty police officers for assault, for burglary, for theft, for solicitation of sex from minors, and some have been found not guilty. I don't have any bias against Minneapolis police. We work with them. We need cops, but we need cops to be law-abiding. And in this case, based on the fact of the Noor-Damon case, clearly Officer Noor violated the rules and deserves to be charged.
Are there any other
what remains unknown about what happened in the alley that night? And how will that impact your case going forward?
Well, you know, some people thought I took too long, 8 months. We tried to do our very best to know everything, and it's hard. There were lots of theories or hypotheses that were suggested that didn't come true when we looked at them. We feel that we have, as best humanly possible, looked at all the facts, and the final information we had to have was from the officers we were required to subpoena to the grand jury. We believe we have as much as humanly possible.
Mike, did you ever find proof that there was an actual sexual assault going on in the alley that night?
The investigation to date has not revealed any particular person. Okay? I'm sorry.
Mike, you were talking about officers not telling their side of the story. Could you talk about Officer Noor? Has he ever shared his side of the story with you, the grand jury, anybody? Can you just talk about that?
Well, Officer Noor, as a suspect in this case, has a Fifth Amendment right not to talk, period. He has chosen not to talk. That's his right. As best I understand, he has not talked to anyone other than his lawyer.
Mike, you said that both officers received the training in the classroom and on the gun range. Were there any red flags? Did they pass all of the necessary training?
You've asked a question, in my view, that goes beyond what's found in the complaint. And if you haven't gotten a copy of the complaint yet, you will either going out the door or it will be posted on our website. I did speak about the training that they went through. That will be fleshed out in addition. But we don't address all those issues in the complaint. And I'm sorry. I don't need to get my hands slapped by the courts or wish yet to have a conviction overturned. So I'm just going to choose not to answer your question, and I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Could you tell us what that bicyclist witness saw and didn't see, and whether he's cooperating with you? The bicyclist did respond, and we do have an interview of him, and there is video. It was not particularly revealing as to the actions of Officer Noor, and I'm not at liberty to share beyond what's in the complaint.
Mike Copeland over here.
Yeah.
Fox 9. Quick question about that third-degree murder statute. Depraved heart. Layman's terms, can you explain that?
Okay, I'll try. A person sitting in a passenger seat of a squad car takes a gun, hears a noise, maybe sees some object, Noor couldn't see the hands of Harity, who was closer, couldn't, and Harity said, as we stated in the complaint, that Harity believed he was in a better spot from the driver's side than the passenger side. He reaches across in front of his partner, shoots a gun at an object that he can't see. That's evidence of a depraved mind, in my view.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for this, and I would like to ask you a question. As a Somali community, we're interested in justice for Justine, and we've been watching this case very closely, as you could imagine, and the reason why. But I want to ask you a question, Mike. You have misspoken this case multiple times. And one time you said you have no evidence, one time you blamed BCA, one time you used grand jury that you said you will never use it again. Do you think, is this a normal process that you are undertaking in this case, having that statements on the record that immigrants in the community are really caught off guard and confused?
There are at least three parts to your question. Let me try to answer them all. The question of the grand jury. I did say 2 years ago I would not use a grand jury to decide whether or not to charge a police officer. And I have continued that practice here. Grand jury does basically two things. It helps to investigate, and grand juries, if asked to, can decide whether a charge should be brought. I use the grand jury on the first part to investigate, because unfortunately many Minneapolis police officers gave me no choice. Okay, as I said to you earlier, this is the first time in my career here we've ever had to do it like that. This would have been done quicker, a good deal quicker, if we'd had the kind of cooperation from all the Minneapolis police officers that we had from the chief and some. Okay, so and I said I would make the decisions in police cases. Okay, and the reason, as I set forth 2 years ago at great length, is because if you use the grand jury to make these decisions, first, you don't know who made the decision other than this group of citizens. Well, now you know who made the decision, and if you don't like it, you have a remedy in the electoral process. Secondly, transparency. The law and the rules of the grand jury prohibit us from sharing who was called, what they said, and the deliberations. I don't think that is good for a democracy. I think a democracy has to be accountable. And I guess I'm pleased to report that most of my fellow county attorneys in Minnesota have followed my lead, as people have across the country. So that's the grand jury issue. You know, as far as an evening when I shared some comments I shouldn't have, that was last December. This is March. We've done a tremendous amount of work since then.
Pilar Arias hopping in here, everybody. Just want to let you know that we're going to be getting another live news conference out of Minnesota in regards to this police officer who resigned after the Justine Diamond case. That's currently what we're listening to here about the charges filed. You're watching Fox News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com.
We've had a lawyer and a legal assistant working full-time since July. And 2 or 3 or 4 of the top lawyers I have, including my 2 wonderful deputies standing behind me, have worked half to 3/4 time, and then we've had some help on the side. These officer-involved shootings are terribly time-consuming, and I believe because of the impact to the community, they have to have our best working as much as we can. That's the kind of effort, hundreds, if not thousands of hours.
Mike, your counterpart in Milwaukee County has his own team which goes out to the scene of every officer-involved shooting or death in custody. Is that something you would consider doing?
You know, my experience of these 2 real tough cases, Jamar Clark and Officer Noor, have led me to believe that there are some things we need to consider to do differently. And we will do those, and we made changes by changing how we use the grand jury. I think we have issues about how we investigate our cases. They're done differently all over the country. In Boston, the DA goes to the scene of the crime and is in charge of the investigation thereafter. In Phoenix, the DA has a 45-person investigative agency within his office to run it. I've got 6 or 7 investigators who kind of do the final cleanup work on cases, and we deal with 7,000 cases a year. So we're looking at that, but I'm going to get this case done and presented to a jury in the fairest way we can first, and then we'll be looking at the other things.
While nothing can erase the pain felt for Justine Damon's loss, today's decision from Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman marks a step forward for Don Damon and Justine's family, her friends and neighbors, and for Minneapolis. It is my hope that the assurance that justice is being pursued in a thorough and transparent way offers some small measure of comfort. But as we weigh the impact of the county attorney's decision to charge, it is important to remember that trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve, especially communities of color, was fractured long before last July. The events of recent years have tested our city in ways that are new to some, but are all too familiar to many neighborhoods throughout Minneapolis. I will be continuing my work with Chief Arredondo and city leadership on our agenda centered on accountability and fairness for the Minneapolis Police Department. We will continue advancing a concerted and direct effort to reinforce de-escalation training and eliminate unnecessary use of force, work to make sure body cameras are activated when they need to be activated, to provide wellness training so officers are in the right state of mind to make fair and unbiased decisions, and hold our officers accountable for their actions through progressive discipline. We are committed to doing this work. Tonight, though, we reflect on Justine's life. We hold the countless people and communities whose lives she touched in our hearts. We celebrate her life, her spirit, and her devotion to helping others. Our city stands firmly with Justine's family and hope they find peace in a time of grief. Our city stands firmly with our Somali community and against those leveling blame on our beloved neighbors. Our city stands firmly with those officers committed to improving police-community relations. And our city stands firmly with victims of police shootings. Together, we must chart a path forward to prevent these tragedies from happening again. I'll give you now our Chief Arredondo.
Thank you, Mayor. To Mr. Don Damon, Mr. John Rushek, Ms. Marianne Heffernan, Mr. Jason Rushek, and Justine's many other family members, friends, and beloved community here in Minneapolis and in Australia, I want to say, I'm sorry. I know that these 3 words will not bring Justine back, but I want you to know that I am deeply saddened and truly sorry for her death and for your tragic loss. Today, Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman officially announced his charging decision in regards to the Officer Noor shooting, which caused the death of Ms. Justine Rushek Damon on July 15th of 2017. Mr. Freeman made this decision after careful review of the evidence. We appreciate his careful consideration and respect his decision that outlines charges of Muhammad Noor with murder in the 3rd degree and manslaughter in the 2nd degree. This tragic event happened on my watch as acting chief. And today, as chief of police, I am ultimately responsible for the conduct of the men and women who wear this uniform and badge. Sanctity of life, to include the protection of life, is a cornerstone of our fundamental duties as peace officers. As chief, I am committed to ensuring that myself and every member of the MPD learn from this tragedy. It is imperative that we as police department build trust in those places where it did not exist and increase the trust in those places where it has been shaken. I know that the overwhelming majority of the men and women of the MPD are dedicated public servants who are guided by the principles of procedural justice, giving community members voice, respect, being neutral in both our interactions and in our decisions, and building trust. If there are criticisms or condemnations of the MPD, they should be directed at me. I will learn from this tragedy, and I will redouble our department's efforts to build trust and hold ourselves accountable, not only to those we serve, but to each other as well, and strive to deliver the most and professional service possible in each and every contact we have. As Mayor Fry stated, officer wellness along with de-escalation training will continue to be a part of our culture of training and our duties. Today, my heartfelt thoughts go out to all of those who have been impacted by the loss of Justine and what today's decision means for them. Muhammad Noor was hired by the Minneapolis Police Department on March 23rd of 2015, and his end date of employment is March 20th of 2018. At the request of the County Attorney's Office, I delayed any employment-related decisions in this matter as to not in any way interfere with the criminal investigation of this case. Thank you.
Chief, does that mean there'd be no internal investigation into, I mean, obviously if you decided to fire him already, had you done an internal investigation?
Right now, through the Minnesota State Data Practices, I'm not allowed to comment on his employment personnel matter at this point, but I wanted to make sure that the dates of his employment were stated.
Chief, I mean, he's been charged with the crime, but he's innocent until proven guilty. Why are we terminating him before a jury has found him guilty of the crimes that have been alleged?
My employment-related decisions are based upon the information that I've received from the County Attorney's Office, and that's what I'm basing it on.
Can you tell us more about what that means? I mean, we're here to be transparent about this process. I don't know what that means.
Those are considerations I had to review through that information, and as chief, I ultimately have to make decisions as it relates to one's employment, and so those are the decisions that I've made.
Would you have liked to have made that decision before today?
Because of the nature and the gravity of a criminal complaint, it is customary for us to make sure that that process plays itself out. And after communications with the county attorney's office, I wanted to assure, and also in terms of the family members involved in this, I wanted to make sure that that criminal process played its course, and so before making any sort of employment decision, which could have impacted the criminal matter.
We heard a lot today about other officers not cooperating in the investigation. Is there anything in policy that says that they are supposed to, or do they get in trouble with you by not cooperating with the county attorney's office?
That matter has come up. I want to assure everyone that we expect, and I expect as Chief of Police, that all of our personnel cooperate with any investigation, certainly those coming from the County Attorney's Office. So that is the expectation. That will continue to be the expectation. Yes.
But can they be disciplined for not doing so?
Certainly they can be.
Chief, how do you respond to Mike Freeman saying he's never seen officers refuse to, quote, do their duty and come forward in this investigation?
What I can say is, again, we expect every employee to cooperate with an investigation. In this particular case, the county attorney's office chose not to go through my office to direct officers to give a statement. There are some employment-related matters for that. We also did not want to, and I did not want to in any way, question the integrity of the investigation from his office through my office. But we do expect every officer to cooperate in a matter such as this.
How do you move forward and go about preventing something like this from happening again?
As chief, there are many things that we have been doing even prior to the shooting death of Miss Justine Damon Rushik. We will continue to redouble our efforts as it relates to community outward-facing public trust. We are the only police department in the state where we publicly make sure that all of our officer engagement activity is captured online, that our communities can see. Our officer use of force is also through a dashboard is captured online, and even our officer-involved shooting is captured. But that alone does not substitute for those day-to-day important, powerful interactions each officer has to build with the community. As I've said before, there are many pieces of equipment we can give and I can give our officers to do the job they need to do. The one thing I cannot give them is the benefit of the doubt. They have to earn that each and every day with their communities that they serve.
Chief, just to go back for 1 second, did you say that Mike Freeman's office did not use the normal channels in order to ask officers to speak? Or what did you mean by that last?
In these situations, it's important, and it's very important for me as an employer to not do anything that would jeopardize a criminal investigation. There is a legal law called Garrity, which I have to be very mindful, which compels an employee to come in and answer a statement, but it could also have a particular consequence to that particular employee as it relates to a criminal matter. I had to be very mindful of that. Those are conversations that I had with the county attorney's office, and so we did not want to, and I certainly did not want to in any way jeopardize the integrity of his investigation.
But will they, in this case, be reprimanded for not participating?
We were still having conversations. That's, you know, we'll continue to have those conversations as we go. My understanding is that every employee that they needed to talk with and interview has done that.
Chief, there's been some presentations on the body camera usage. It's still far from perfect. Convince us that this isn't just lip service in terms of making sure that police officers are actually being held accountable and not following the rules.
I can tell you that we are continuing to make sure that our body-worn camera policy is robust, that it's accountable to our communities, that it's best practices for our department. Mayor Fry and I have been meeting constantly and will continue to meet to make sure it is something as the technology changes, but more so to make sure that the trust is built into that, where it's something that our communities can expect us to have on when they should be on, and we're going to continue to keep working on that.
At the presentation, this was a week or two ago at the City Council, your command staff said he wasn't sure why some officers just weren't turning them on or were turning them off before the incident was over. I mean, this seems like this is, he said he couldn't explain why. So it seems like it's more than just the technology.
The questions that were raised during that council hearing, some of those policies are being looked at right now in our draft. Unfortunately, it's a draft right now, but we are working on that to address those same issues. And some of it also is about technology, but we're using all of those things to make sure that we try and continue to get that policy to where it needs to be.
Chief, he's no longer on the police force. Can you tell us more about former Officer Knorr's training, how many times he had to take tests before he was put on the street?
Through our data practices, I can't really comment on these private personnel matters at this time.
Chief, Knorr is the third officer to be charged criminally for actions that allegedly occurred while on duty. Are you getting a sense from officers that perhaps this may be having a chilling effect on perhaps they're thinking twice about performing their duties if they're looking over their shoulders that they might be charged in criminal court?
No, I do stand behind my statement that the overwhelming majority of the men and women who wear this uniform and badge are coming to work every day to serve in a manner that's professional. I will continue to gauge as these incidents occur, to gauge where they're at in terms of their thinking right now, but I have not received any sort of even anecdotal that they're hesitant in their duties of serving professionally, and we will continue to do that. We will continue to move forward.
Can you clarify if Officer Knorr resigned or was fired?
I can, because of the law, I can only give you his hiring date, start date, and end date.
What has changed within the department since the shooting? What kind of changes have been made?
We have continued to make a lot of changes. I think one of the changes that we've made is certainly making sure that we have more officers out there doing the job. But one of the things that conversations that I know that Mayor Fry and I have had and that he's committed to is the wellness of our officers. In order for our officers to do their best, they have to be at their best. For so long, we've looked at trauma as it relates to our communities, but we have failed to look at that in terms of the impact on our officers. Having officers that are well and doing their jobs will absolutely increase that sort of relationship and the trust, and officers coming out and having those positive relationships with our community and being in a position to do their jobs in the best way that they possibly can. De-escalation, crisis intervention training, we'll continue to have that as a part of our training. Wellness is so very important to that. Mindfulness training is another thing that we are doing and will continue to expound upon.
Both officers involved were newer to the department. Has that changed in terms of the age of the officer who's paired with each other? If that makes sense.
Yes, so some of that will vary just from precinct to precinct, but we continue to hire, but we're making sure that all of our officers, all of those fundamental core training principles, CIT, crisis intervention training, de-escalation training, community service work of our recruits, getting out into our communities, serving before they even get the badge sworn on, building those relationships, that's so very important. That will continue.
Mayor Fry, you've said multiple times that one of your top priorities is rebuilding trust between the community and police department. We just sat through a press conference where we heard Mike Freeman confirm that a woman thought she heard someone in distress, called the police, and then when the officer showed up, though through no fault of her own, she was shot and killed. Can you sort of tell us your next steps in terms of how you actually mend those bridges, and why should if I'm a Minneapolis citizen, why should I feel safe calling 911?
Well, we are putting accountability at the forefront of our policy agenda in terms of public safety, and that means everything from making sure that the use of force policy is in line with the general mentality, and that's making sure that reasonable alternatives are used prior to resorting to deadly force. That means changing and amending our body camera policy. Having a body camera nor a policy doesn't do any good unless the body cameras are turned on, and as we've seen, far too often that is not the case, but we are making progress now as of Q4 2017, and we believe that we will see more progress in Q1 2018. Chief Arredondo mentioned wellness training. Officers need to have the ability to recalibrate between calls, to set their mind and making sure that they're not making biased decisions. And then finally, we will have several initiatives that are moving forward as part of our budget to expand and enhance community police relations, which obviously needs a lot of work right now.
Can you tell us what those initiatives will be?
Where we are working with MPD and our Chief Arredondo to get them set up. So no, I'm not gonna give you a full rundown until they're totally baked.
Last question. Okay,
thank you very much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, they are wrapping things up there in Minnesota. I'm going to take you now to another recorded event from earlier during the stream break. Hopefully no record issues here. The First Lady of the United States held a roundtable in regards to cyberbullying. Let's take a listen.
We done with Google. Thank you for doing this. Of course. Nice to see you. Welcome to the White House. Before I begin today, I'd like to take a moment to extend our thoughts and prayers to the families, students, and faculties affected by the school shooting in Maryland today. These tragedies are becoming far too common and only renews my commitment to doing all we can to provide children all we can and all the tools that they need to grow up happy and healthy. I know some of you have traveled quite a distance, and I want to thank you for being here today. You're all experts in innovation and technology, and I appreciate you taking time to focus on how children use the internet. In my role as First Lady, I receive many letters from children who have been bullied or feel threatened on social media. I know that each of your companies and groups have been working on these issues so many years, and I look forward to hearing what you have learned, what has been accomplished, and what progress still needs to be made. I'm well aware that people are skeptical of me discussing this topic. I have been criticized for many commitment to tackling this issue, and I know that will continue. But it will not stop me from doing what I know is right. I'm here with one goal: helping children and our next generation. I look forward to learning from and working with each of you, and I believe together we can make a real difference in encouraging positive behaviors on social media. Thank you all for being here. And now, please, I would like to ask everyone to introduce yourself. And then we go to discussion.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for convening us today. Very much appreciate you highlighting this important issue. My name is Stephen Balcom. I'm the father of 2 digital daughters and the founder and CEO of the Family Online Safety Institute. We're in our 11th year, and we see online safety as the critical challenge of our digital age. And in response to that, we believe we need to create a culture of responsibility where industry, law enforcement, government, parents, teachers, and the kids themselves all have a role to play. We also believe that we need to work together to apply the golden rule, to treat others as we wish to be treated throughout our digital life. So we're delighted to be here. We've worked with all of these companies and many more across the internet ecosystem, and we look forward to working with you and your team on this initiative. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Huseman, Vice President of Public Policy at Amazon, and thank you very much, First Lady, for having us here and for leading this important discussion. Amazon, we strive to be the world's most customer-centric company, and as part of that mission, we work to create technologies for parents so they can ensure a safe online experience for their children. One example of that is Amazon Free Time, and this is a service that allows children to explore a curated internet content by also providing parental control and visibility into their children's online activities. So for example, parents can require that their children read a book for 30 minutes before they're allowed to play video games, as one example. And parents love it and the safe space it creates online. Another example is Alexa, which is Amazon's voice-activated artificial intelligence assistant. And we hope that Alexa can provide important information to parents and children. So for example, if someone asks Alexa that he's being bullied, Alexa will say that that's not okay, to talk with someone that you trust, and will direct you to stopbullying.gov. So we think this is a new technology, and we hope it provides some information that parents and children otherwise might not have. So thank you again for inviting me here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Hi, my name is Antigone Davis, and I'm the head of safety at Facebook. My team focuses in particular on children's safety. And I wanted to thank you very much for convening this conversation and for all of the companies for joining today. We have a long history of working with experts like our Safety Advisory Board, child development experts, social and emotional learning experts to ensure that our platform provides a positive and safe experience for children. And we look forward to talking to everybody today and working together to identify additional opportunities for doing so. Great, thank you.
Chris Liddell, I'm Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy Implementation. Thank you, First Lady, for your leadership on this incredibly important issue. I'm interested at two levels. One, obviously from a policy point of view, interested in what these leading companies are doing and intending to do in the future. And then at a personal level, I have two teenage children. So looking for a few tips as well. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, First Lady. My name is Julie Brill. I am Corporate Vice President and Deputy General Counsel for Global Privacy and Regulatory Affairs at Microsoft. Thank you so much for convening this meeting and for raising this incredibly important issue regarding online safety for children and for teens. I, too, have two children. They're now men. They're in their early 20s, but they certainly are digital natives. Microsoft has a long-standing commitment to protecting children, teens, and parents, and indeed anyone online. For nearly 2 decades, we've worked to provide guidance, tips, and easy-to-use tools for staying safe online. And we developed these tools, these guidances, these tips based on research that we have done and also feedback that we've had from stakeholders. We collaborate with advocates, industry partners like those that you've gathered here today, and governments worldwide to develop solutions and promote effective public policies that help protect people online. We also invest in features and capabilities to improve the online safety of our own products and services, and we collaborate with others on technological innovations. I'm very much looking forward to talking to you about some of the new innovations that we've developed. I think they're really neat, and I think that you'll really like them. And I am so pleased that we're going to be talking about what more we can do in the future to help kids and teens online. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lee Dunn with Google, and I'm a mother of 3 young kids, and my son is the same age as your son. So similar to you, I'm learning all of this and learning how to explain it to my son and how to be a responsible parent and raise a responsible young adult to utilize these amazing tools online, but responsibly and respectfully. So I think as a mother, I'm really happy that you're taking this on and that you're convening this group. At Google, we take that responsibility of raising educated users for our platform. So we have gone out to hundreds of schools in the US and partnered with the National Association of Middle School Principals to develop a curriculum. And we've reached over 62,000 students with our curriculum, and we call it the Online Internet Safety Roadshow. And we don't talk about any one platform, but we talk about how to be smart online, how to not share your password with your friends, because one person who may be your friend today may not be as friendly with you tomorrow. And be really smart and responsible online and kind with each other. We've reached 62,000 kids, as I've said, with this program, and it's taught by young Google employees, and it has a really youthful vibe in middle schools, and sometimes engages the teachers or the principals or the parents at the PTA, because parents are really important. And then the other product that we've rolled out for education to young adults is called Be Internet Awesome, and it's an online interactive game to learn about being smart online, and we've had over 2 million young adults interact with that website and that game and hopefully take those tools and lessons with them online. So we're doing a lot in working with young adults to hopefully educate them to be smart, responsible, and kind online. So I look forward to telling you more about that.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Andrew Bremberg, Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, and thank you, First Lady, for convening this group today. I'm here particularly interested in learning about what opportunities there are for government to help either in the neighborhood of research or to help promote safe practices and safe activities that we can encourage young people to engage in. As a parent of 4 young children that are just beginning to use technology, it's very daunting, and I really hope that we can learn not just as a parent, but help our country as a whole learn about these important tools that are available to help protect our children. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Carlos Monet with Twitter, and thank you so much for your leadership in this area. I have a 2-year-old at home. He's too young to be on our platform, but we at Twitter work very hard to make sure we have a safe environment for those who are 13 and older who are allowed to be on there. We work hard to have strong policies to improve our technology so we can actually implement them. And so we partner with non-governmental organizations around the world to learn from them, to make sure that we're making improvements to the platform, and that we're doing our part to educate parents, teachers, and young people themselves. Young people do come to Twitter to find community, to explore their identities, to advocate for change, and we've seen some pretty inspirational things, and we can learn a lot from them, both in their bravery and in how savvy they are, but they do need guidance, and so thank you for your leadership.
Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Stout. I'm here with SNAP. I'm the head of global public policy for SNAP, also known as Snapchat. SNAP's goal is to empower people to be creative, to learn about the world around them, and to ultimately have fun. We take this very seriously, but we also spend a lot of time thinking about the safety of our users. Our platform is one that we encourage our users to be responsible, to be thoughtful, to be respectful. Our company has spent a lot of time thinking about this, and along with the other people around this table, we're very delighted to be part of this conversation, so thank you for convening us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. My name is Michael Beckerman. I'm the president and CEO of the Internet Association. We represent 40 of the world's leading internet companies, including the companies at the table today. Appreciate your leadership in convening this conversation because it's an incredibly important one. And I think it's evident from the comments of everybody around the table so far that our members make this a priority. It's a responsibility for all of us as adults, as parents, as technology leaders, to educate parents and educate students, but also to come up with the tools to make it easier. And each one of our companies is unique in the products and the platforms that they offer, but they all make it a priority to protect children online and the way that translates to offline. We want to make sure that young people today can be good digital citizens, but they can be productive and courteous and civil, regular citizens in the offline world as well. And the tools and education that our companies are implementing and continuing to implement will be very important for both teachers and parents and students, obviously. And so thank you for convening this conversation. We look forward to working with you on it.
Thank you all again for being here, and I'm looking for discussion. And thank you all. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. So very brief letting us in there on that roundtable, but that's what happened there with the First Lady, Melania Trump, taking you live out now to the White House. East Coast ready for nor'easter round 4. I was going to play the State Department briefing for you with Heather Nauert because we had so much breaking news today that we actually did not get to air that live. But Fox 10 Phoenix's very own Christy Siefkin is going to join me on set any moment now to talk about this nor'easter round 4 on what happens to be the first day of spring. So she'll be here any moment. You're watching News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com. If you're a first timer here, welcome. We're happy to have you. Please do us a favor and click that subscribe button. You'll be alerted anytime we go live with breaking news, which lately has been a lot. All right, everybody, we're getting a live look now at the FedEx facility in Schertz, Texas, where that package exploded overnight. These are aerials being provided to us. Don't believe there's any sound coming from there, and we also have no control of the picture, but we're going to take a look at this while we wait for Christy to come up here any moment now. No audio indeed. After I talk to Christy about Nor'easter Round 4, we'll play that State Department briefing for you. You're watching News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. All right, looks like Skyfox is leaving. Let's take you out to, well, maybe not. Let's continue watching here. Sometimes it looks like they're leaving and then they don't. It's like a trick. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, it looks like they're doing some sort of tornado coverage there with a reporter. Let's listen in. What do you say?
Yes.
We spent the day crisscrossing Harrison County with the National Weather Service as they were We spent the day crisscrossing.
Now, Massey tells me that the break that her father suffered to his leg is so severe that it requires surgery. He remains hospitalized at Atlanta Medical Center. Reporting in Buchanan, Claire Sims, Fox 5 News.
Well, that was quick, wouldn't you all say? We got the tail end of that. That's all right, though. Continue to look at these live aerials here out of Schertz, Texas. How's everybody's day going? It's Tuesday, can you believe it? I feel like this week is going by so slow yet so fast at the same time because of all the breaking news that we're having. So busy that we weren't able to air Heather Nauert's State Department briefing, but we will have you covered here as soon as I talk with Christy on set about nor'easter round number 4. Any of you out there experiencing snow or cold? More snow on the way. No, one of our News Now viewers saying that the snow is killing baby tulips and daffodils. So sad. Another one saying happy spring equinox day. Hey, thanks so much. Someone's eating pizza. I want some pizza. Speaking of pizza, while we continue watching this FedEx facility live aerials out of Schertz, Texas, any of you want to tell me your favorite type of pizza, whether that involves toppings or where you get it from, you know, delivery service or grocery store, frozen or fresh? I know there's a place that you like go to buy frozen pizzas and then you bake them yourselves. Anyway, let's talk pizza. While we're on the topic of pizza, did you all see that report where people said that they were more enticed to work hard, or like they were happier if a work bonus involved pizza over cash? Mind you, I think the cash was only something like 30 bucks, but I heard that story and I was like, what? Someone is not feeling the pizza talk in the chat. But we're continuing to take a live look here at the FedEx facility in Schertz, Texas, while we wait for Christy Siefkin to arrive any moment to talk about the nor'easter. We're all about news here on News Now. It is a part of our name. All right, Sky Fox is definitely leaving now, so let's go to Times Square. You guys like Times Square? All right, everybody. Christy Siefkin is here. Want to say hi?
Yes, hello. And I'll scooch closer to you.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay. I was interviewing a guy doing extra today, and he was sitting like back and like far away, and I felt so
His
bad.
face was kind of like this, just a little bit of hair sticking out.
Like, get closer. And, anyway, it was a little awkward.
Well, as I learned from our photographer, photojournalist Tom Fergus on the morning show, when you shoot an interview, he says get close together, feels awkward, looks great.
Yeah.
So not that this feels awkward with Pilar, but it does feel like a little closer than you should stand in the grocery store line.
And I just realized I made the graphic and I totally swapped our names, but I'm not going to change it now.
That's okay. I'll be Pilar today. That's interesting and different.
I'll be Christy.
I like it. I like it.
So we're talking Nor'easter, fourth round, right, Christy?
Yes, fourth round in 3 weeks. And, you know, it seems like this might be unusual. It actually isn't. This is something that's happened quite a few times in the last 10 years, but it doesn't mean that the storm isn't packing a punch. And what we're watching on the screen right now, right through the Ohio Valley, rolling through West Virginia and Tennessee, that's kind of the heart of the circulation. So obviously we've seen some severe weather in the southeast yesterday and today, but of course the northeast is the place that everybody's talking about. So I'm trying to advance our graphic, but
you normally can when you're here on set. It works. I don't know what's going on now.
We're doing the little magical. Let me try another.
Is it on?
It is on. I have it playing for us and everything. Well, the point I was going to make, and you can actually see the snow kind of rolling through Delaware, Maryland, pushing into parts of New York and Pennsylvania, is that it's kind of a mix right now. It is rain, sleet, as well as snow, and this is going to be a system that really brings a significant amount of snow to New York City, as well as to Boston, Philadelphia. With the past systems, there was a really small line between where the rain turned into snow, and so when the system drifted even a few miles, 20 or 30 miles to the east or to the west, areas that we originally forecasted would get a lot of snow didn't necessarily, and vice versa. But this is going to be a big snow event for many of those cities. Blizzard conditions, one of the issues, sustained winds probably 30 to 40 miles an hour, gusty winds along the Cape, 60 miles an hour or more. Now the good news with this system for the coastal region is that the storm surge and the coastal flooding shouldn't be as much of a threat.
That's good.
But many locations, and I had a beautiful little graphic for you, are expected to get between 8 and 12 inches of snow. So,
I saw that, the totals.
Yeah, Washington, D.C., Baltimore could be getting anywhere between 8 and 12. New York City, some models have up to 14 inches of snow possible. The same for Philadelphia, could see 12 to 14 inches once this system is all said and done. And it's rolling through now, but all day Wednesday and even midday into Thursday is when we're going to see kind of the heart of the action.
What a way to start spring.
Yes, exactly. So we've got this going on in New England, the West Coast obviously bracing for some really strong rain that unfortunately is going to affect Santa Barbara, the place that we've seen all of the fires. And then here in the valley, we've got the opposite problem. It's really warm. Looks like we'll probably see some 90s as we get into your Wednesday and your Thursday. So definitely a mixed bag to kick off the first day of spring.
We actually have some gardening viewers watching right this second that they're like, this snow is killing my flowers, my daffodils.
I was just going to say.
My tulips.
That's one of my favorite photos that I've seen from friends who live back east. Are sometimes you do see the daffodils popping up through the snow. They've obviously bloomed and it wasn't enough snow to kill them, but yeah, you guys are gonna have to wait a little bit until you can get outside, and probably the ground will be a little tough if you've got your shovel and are trying to do any gardening.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm going to take everybody live out now to San Francisco, and I only know this is San Francisco because I've been there recently.
I love it. That's where I moved from. Before here, yes. So it's near and dear to my heart. How did you like San Francisco?
I loved it. It was my first time there, and I felt like I was experiencing like multiple U.S. cities in one destination.
It's such a melting pot. It definitely is.
Like for everyone else, you'd have to go to like 4 different cities to experience everything that I did in one.
And in a very small area, too.
I walked more than 30 miles in 2 days, technically.
Good for you.
Oof.
Well, you want to wear my Fitbit? Because I really have not been doing as much walking as I should, Pilar.
All right, Christy, we'll let you go. Thanks so much.
Sure thing.
All right, everybody. I promised you that we would have the State Department briefing with Heather Nauert. That's on tap next, right here on News Now, part of Fox 10 Phoenix.com.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome. So you may see some very young, fresh faces in the building today. And that because, yes, of course, I'm talking about Michelle here. No, just a little bit younger, Michelle. We have a new A100 class that started this week, so we're thrilled to welcome them. They're not in the room with us here today, but they are here at the State Department and also over at the Foreign Service Institute. We have welcomed this week the 193rd Foreign Service Generalist class on March 19th. 36 officers are in this class, in the A100 training class, over at FSI for the rest of the week. The class includes a number of distinguished veterans and U.S. Armed Forces, former Peace Corps volunteers, and former employees of various government agencies. In the private sector, they've worked as researchers, analysts, students, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and also contractors. Also included are 2 Thomas Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellows, one in the political career track and one in the public diplomacy track. Almost all of the class has postgraduate degrees, and many have worked, studied, or volunteered abroad. The languages spoken by the group include French, Romanian, Swahili, Tagalog, Spanish, Hindi, Czech, Japanese, and well, there are a whole lot of others that I won't mind. Thank you. Thank you. So welcome to this class, and we look forward to seeing them around, and perhaps we can invite them to a briefing someday, Robert, if they're bored and want to join us. Next, I'd like to mention the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to the United States. We would like to warmly welcome him on his visit to the United States. As you likely saw, the President met with the Crown Prince just a short while ago. Our Deputy Secretary, John Sullivan, was also over at the White House for a lunch in his honor earlier today. Saudi Arabia is a key partner and a longtime friend of the United States. The U.S.-Saudi relationship has evolved and strengthened since 1940, when our 2 countries first established full diplomatic ties. Saudi Arabia's security is a priority for the United States, and we work closely with our Saudi partners to counter the threatening behavior of dangerous actors in the region. The visit provides an important opportunity for discussions on a wide range of regional and bilateral issues. We look forward to further strengthening U.S.-Saudi relationship and advancing our common security and economic priorities. And lastly, I'd like to draw your attention to the ongoing humanitarian crisis taking place in Venezuela. Effective immediately, the United States is increasing its humanitarian assistance to Venezuelans who are in Colombia, who were forced to leave their own country due to the ongoing crisis created by the Maduro regime. USAID is providing a new initial immediate assistance, which totals $2.5 million in partnership with the government of Colombia. That funding is in addition to $36.5 million that the State Department is providing in fiscal years 2017 and 2018 to support the regional humanitarian operations of UNHCR and other international organizations. The operations include assistance for Venezuelans who are now residing outside of their country. We applaud the government and the people of Colombia for their compassion in hosting hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans who fled their country. The United States stands with the hemisphere and democratic nations around the world in support of the Venezuelan people, wherever they may be. We will continue to closely monitor the crisis, and we are aware that UNHCR has issued an appeal for funding, and we are now considering that additional funding. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thanks.
Hi, Matt.
Hello. Happy Tuesday. Just briefly, very briefly on the A100 class. This is the first of the year, correct?
Yes, it is.
And how many more are planned?
I don't know the answer to that, but we're happy to have the first one. And if I can find out how many more classes will be announced, I will let you know.
And that and any progress made on the strategic hiring, is that still a thing since the Secretary?
Which the hiring.
SHI?
The hiring freeze, is that what you mean?
The strategic hiring initiative that was announced by the Deputy Secretaries a couple of weeks ago.
And this is where we can bring on people on an as-needed basis. I believe that is all ongoing, but I'll double check the details and provide them to you.
Would like to know if there's any impact if that has any impact on A100 class.
Okay.
Now, let's start.
They've got a lot of work ahead of them, though.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Students do.
I'm sure they do. Let's start with Russia, given the fact that I don't believe you guys have said anything yet. This building has not said anything yet about the election over the weekend. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think I would first
draw attention to the fact that it's simply no surprise that Vladimir Putin was reelected and that he remains the leader of Russia. We have talked for a long time here about the clampdown on many of the freedoms that people should enjoy in Russia and have not been able to enjoy. We're watching closely the monitors who are involved in the election, the gold standard of monitors, the OSCE monitors. They have issued a preliminary report on the election. We have no reason to doubt that the report's conclusions are incorrect. We have every reason to believe that the conclusions are correct. I'd like to read for you just an excerpt from their preliminary report. The OSCE ODIHR team noted that the election in Russia took place in an overly controlled legal and political environment marked by continued pressure on critical voices. Restrictions on fundamental freedoms resulted in a lack of genuine competition and an uneven playing field. We saw in the news over the weekend that some people were paid to turn out to vote. We've seen that opposition leaders have been intimidated, jailed, and other things of the sort. So I would just draw us back to the OSCE preliminary report. We will review that report. We'll take a look at their final report when it comes out.
Okay. So just as a little aside, ODIHR, we like to call it ODIR.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
Okay.
I'll tell you, Matt should be doing this job. What are you doing sitting down there, Matt?
This is very, this is a bit of a contrast here between what you just said and what was not said at the White House a little while ago, and what was not said in the president's phone call with President Putin, at least according to what the White House said. Does this mean your acceptance of your endorsement of the ODIR assessment? Does that mean that you do not believe that that this election was a free and fair one?
I think that we would agree with the OSCE and its preliminary report. Again, it's preliminary. We've seen all the news that has come out of Russia. I would direct you back to the readout that the White House provided of the president's phone call with Vladimir Putin. Just because you see certain words in a readout does not mean that the call wasn't more comprehensive than the readout that was provided. We've seen that on many occasions at the State Department, where a readout just provides somewhat of a limited scope or description of a phone call.
Right, but I mean, one thing that the president said himself, but also was in the statement, was that he had congratulated President Putin on his victory. Is that something the State Department shares?
You know what? I would say that that's called protocol. And there are many countries from around the world that when someone wins, if you will, an election, that you pick up the phone and you place that phone call. We saw that from Macron. We've seen that from other world leaders who have done the same thing with Vladimir Putin. People call the United States when we when we participate in an election and win an election. So I just say that's standard. Look, there's one thing that we have to do, whether folks like it or not. We have a relationship with the Russian government. That is just a part of the world. That is just simply a reality. That does not mean that we agree with them on everything. That does not mean that we get along on every single issue. We have been very clear about calling them out for their responsibility of the horrific attacks that have continued to take place in eastern Ghouta in Syria, and we hold Russia accountable for that. So I want to be clear that we call out Russia when they are responsible for an action, and we will not hesitate to do so. But the reality is that we are two nuclear powers, two superpowers in this world, and we still have to be able to pick up the phone and have a dialogue and conversation with one another. That's
okay, that's understood. But, you know, the OSCE didn't come out with a damning report about the French presidential election. I don't remember the president calling up President Maduro of Venezuela after he won in what you guys said was a sham election last year. I can't remember any president calling up President Mugabe and saying, congrats on your Zimbabwe election over the course of decades until he was finally ousted. So
well, Matt, I can give you the phone numbers to reach Angela Merkel, also Macron, and
if you got their cell,
and the President of the United States. You can call them and ask them why those world leaders and others did this as well. The reality is we have to have a relationship whether folks like it or not.
Did you get Chancellor Merkel's number from the NSA or someone else?
Very fine. I'll see where I can get it.
And just the last thing on this.
Okay.
When she was asked if you guys thought that the election was free and fair, your colleague Sarah Sanders said, we don't get to dictate how other countries operate. Does this, I mean, no one is saying that the United States dictates how other countries operate, but you do call them out, and you seem to have called them out here, despite what was not said at the White House. So I'm just wondering, when the human rights reports come out later on this month, potentially, or next month, is there going to be criticism or a recognition of shortcomings in other countries' elections, regardless of Russia?
Well, that human rights report has not been released just yet. We look forward to releasing it in the coming weeks. We don't have a date for it just yet. It has not been finalized at this point, so I'm not going to preview what's in it. And by the way, it's big, thick, and I haven't taken a look at all the details yet.
Removing the United States from criticizing other elections that don't meet international standards, are you?
The State Department, and the State Department does this. We will certainly call out other countries where other countries are responsible for bad actions. That hasn't changed. That doesn't change administration to administration. Leslie, go ahead.
By the president calling and congratulating President Putin, was he actually saying that he then accepts that he is the new leader of Russia?
As you know, I'm not over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm right here. So I'd have to refer you to the White House for that. I was not on the call. I don't know the tone. I don't know what was said in the call beyond what was released in the readout, and knowing that they also addressed some other matters such as Syria and other things that were not included in the readout.
Right. Has there been anything from this department to the Russian government as far as reaching out and saying, that you don't necessarily agree with?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure our embassy has had contact with the government, I would imagine, but I don't have anything specific to provide you.
And then I have a follow-up. So if the congratulatory phone call to President Putin from Donald Trump accepts that he is the new president, do you expect, and also this was the same week that the U.S. ad gave, well, actually was it, today's Wednesday, I think it was Friday, where the U.S. Added sanctions to against Russian officials.
That was last week, yeah.
Correct.
Last Thursday.
Correct. Do you expect President Putin to soften his stance towards U.S. Do you expect President Putin to be less aggressive towards the U.S. now, or do you see the U.S. continuing to up its pressure on Russia through sanctions?
Well, sanctions remain a tool in the toolkit of the United States and many other countries. It's something that we don't hesitate to use, whether it's sanctions related to CATSA, that's what was announced last week. We don't preview our sanctions, but keep an eye on what will be coming forward in the coming weeks and months with regard to the United States and Russia. We have put sanctions in place as a result of Russia's activities in Ukraine. We, as many of you will recall, kicked out diplomats last year, or not that long ago. We also shuttered some of their buildings here in the United States, to much criticism from many in the press who accused us of being overly aggressive in asking the Russians to leave and in closing down some of those buildings. So we will take those actions and won't hesitate to take those actions when they're necessary, and we believe they're correct to do so.
Speaking of holding Russia accountable, how would you describe the process as it stands right now for punishing or taking action against Russia for the spy poisoning?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How would you describe where the process is right now in terms of looking at possibly taking action against Russia after the poisoning in the UK?
I think I just addressed that with Leslie. Let me back up for just a minute and say we stand firmly by our ally, firmly by the Brits. We have every reason to believe their accounting and their concerns, as do many other countries as well, about what took place against the gentleman living in the UK. So you saw the statement that was put out by the EU. NATO put out a statement as well, as did the Quad. So many other countries share our tremendous concerns about this activity that Russia took against this individual and his daughter living in the United Kingdom. So we understand and support what the British government has chosen to do in terms of kicking out the Russian diplomats from its country. As I just said to Leslie a minute ago, we're not going to preview some of our activities, but we are watching closely and we may be taking action.
Okay, and what would, because the U.S. at this point believes the UK's assessment, has no reason to disbelieve it. How does that make Russia any different from, say, North Korea, which has now been designated a state sponsor of terror for a very similar assassination?
Right. We covered this last week. You may recall that under the chemical weapons treaty, that North Korea was determined to be out of compliance with that treaty obligation, and that is because North Korea used a weapon, a chemical agent, against Kim Jong-un's, I always forget, half-brother, stepbrother, half-brother, thank you. It used that. It was not something that was put in place right away, sanctions against North Korea. So some of that can take some time. We evaluate, we assess, and then we put in place sanctions. I'm not going to rule out that that won't happen in the future. Okay. Hey, Saeed. Hi.
Yes, Russia?
Oh, okay. Saeed, I'll come back to you. Okay. We'll do Saeed next.
Okay,
Lori.
Just on Russia, the British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson has said that over the past decade, Russia has stockpiled nerve agent. It's not some simple, small thing. Do you agree with that assessment that Russia has been stockpiling some significant amount of nerve agent?
You know, I'm not sure that we have a final conclusion on that. We know that Russia has declared some of its stockpiles, but I want to be clear that sometimes countries will not declare everything that they have. This is something that the United States will closely evaluate.
So you don't accept as conclusive the Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons determination that Russia had destroyed everything last fall? That's not a conclusive determination?
Well, no. What I said is declared, and that's the key word, what a country has declared. We believe that they have destroyed their declared stockpile, but whether or not there was something that perhaps was undeclared, that could be a different story. Okay? Saeed.
Yes, I want to go to the Palestinian issue. Do you have any reaction to the speech by Palestinian Authority President Abbas in which he levied a direct insult on the American ambassador?
Yeah, I had a chance to meet with Ambassador Freeman last week and had dinner at his home and spent some time with my colleagues in Tel Aviv and also for a short period of time in Jerusalem. You know, I can say when I saw the comments that came out by Mahmoud Abbas, I mean, you look at that. It's a terrible thing to say about anyone. It's a terrible thing to say about a U.S. official. So comments like that are not only rude, but they're unhelpful. They're unhelpful because this administration would like to see an Israeli and Palestinian peace process. What he said is hampers the ability, we believe, to have the Israelis and Palestinians sit down and have a conversation together to work out a peace process. What they should focus their ire on is the horrific situation that has been unfolding for residents in Gaza. You and I have talked about this on numerous occasions, the difficulties with electricity, with clean water, and all of that. Our colleague Felicia Schwartz back here knows that well since she spent quite a bit of time in Israel lately, which, by the way, can I say congratulations? No, nothing. Okay. All right. Never mind. Disregard that. In any event, so my point is, Saeed, you know, that kind of comment is unhelpful.
Okay. Let me ask you, conversely, what the ambassador said, he said that President Abbas was anti-Semitic for saying what he said about him. Is that tantamount to anti-Semitism?
I haven't seen that part of the that part of the comment, but it's certainly not a kind thing that he said.
Okay, and basically the context in which Abbas was talking about what seems to be sort of an encouragement or support for settlement activities in the West Bank by the U.S. ambassador. Are you worried that there is a creeping annexation of the West Bank by the building settlements?
You know, Saeed, we've talked about this so many times. I want to just hit the play button about settlements. And the president's position on settlements has been clear that we do not believe that unrestrained settlement activity advances the cause for peace or the prospect for peace. And we've made that position clear to the government over there.
So there is an asymmetry between the position of the White House and the position of the American ambassador to Israel?
Look, we are all on the same page with regard to this. That is the administration's policy, and that's what we work on from this building.
And
okay, and then I'm going to, and Saeed, last one, then I'm going to have to move on.
I want to ask you about the young Palestinian teenager, Ahad Tamimi, who's being refused a public trial. She's being tried behind closed doors for slapping Israeli soldiers. Do you have any comment on that? Are you concerned?
I'm certainly aware of her case. You and I have talked about this before. We believe that people should have the right to a fair trial. Beyond that, Saeed, I just have to refer you to the government of Israel for just the details on her particular case. Miss, hi. Remind your name is
Susanna.
Susanna. Hold on one second. Yeah.
No doubt that what was said was offensive and terrible, but I mean, is this administration really in a position to take the moral high ground that it seems to be taking when the President of the United States routinely insults his political opponents, routinely denigrates members of the press and others, and with language that is in some cases harsher than what President Abbas used?
Matt, I think I would go back to one of the main tenets that we support here at the State Department, and that is not only the right to a free press, but also the right to free speech. And I may not like, and others may not like, what Mahmoud Abbas had said about our ambassador. I don't think it's right. As a mom, as a woman, as a citizen of the United States, I don't like hearing that about our ambassador. But we believe also in the right to free speech, and that includes for our president as well.
Okay. So then there won't be any quote-unquote punishment for President Abbas for using his right to free speech?
I'm not aware of any whatsoever.
Thank you.
Okay. Go right ahead. Sorry, Miss.
So, Heather, a few days ago, 39 senators sent a letter to Acting Secretary John Sullivan in which they stressed their opposition towards Nord Stream 2 and encouraged the administration to utilize all tools at its disposal, including a provision in the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, to prevent construction of the Nord Stream 2. A week before, Russian newspaper Kommersant informed that the U.S. has no appetite for introducing sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Do you think that should the sanctions be introduced, of course, they could have a serious impact on the project and companies which are engaged in construction and financing of the projects like Nord Stream 2 or Turkish Stream 2?
Sure. So one of the things you're talking about is CATSA. And at the State Department, we've spent a lot of time speaking with our partners and allies in other countries overseas to explain to them the ramifications of CATSA and how an individual or a company or a country could run afoul against CATSA and fall into sanctions. So in general, as a general matter, as you all know, we don't tend to comment on sanctions actions, but we've been clear that firms that work in the Russian energy export pipeline sector could, if they engage in that kind of business, they could expose themselves to sanctions under CATSA. As many people know, we oppose the Nord Stream 2 project. The United States government does. We believe that the Nord Stream 2 project would undermine Europe's overall energy security and stability. It would provide Russia another tool to pressure European countries, especially countries such as Ukraine. We've seen that what Russia has done in the past when they've turned off the pipeline in the middle of winter, causing some families to not have heat, not have the oil that they need to stay warm or cook their food, and we think that that is simply wrong. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Rich, hi.
Hi, Heather. Just a quick one on Pakistan. Has Pakistan come any closer to satisfying the conditions the United States has laid out to unfreeze the aid that was frozen? Any progress update on that relationship?
Sure. So we made an announcement, I believe it was late last year. My days get a little confused sometimes, about that freeze in the foreign military assistance for Pakistan. One of the things that the president has called for in his South Asia strategy is for Pakistan to take on greater responsibility for cracking down on terror groups. And we've certainly seen Pakistan take some positive steps in the right direction, but a lot more needs to be done in terms of Pakistan cracking down not just on the Taliban, but the Haqqani network and other terror networks as well. Vice President Mike Pence met with the Prime Minister Abbasi of Pakistan just on Friday of last week. They talked about the overall South Asia strategy, the administration's South Asia strategy, and that's one of the things that the Vice President addressed with him. He said, the government of Pakistan has to do more to address the continued presence of terrorism in Pakistan. There's a lot more that they can do, but they can also play a critical role in with the Taliban and getting the Taliban to come to the table in Pakistan. So
encouraged by some steps, and what you're saying, the improvement that has to specifically do with terror networks?
That is one of the key points, yes. Okay. Hi, Janet.
Hi. Thank you very much. North Korea, two questions for North Korea. Quick question. Did you get any signal that North Korea has decided to release the U.S. detainees?
I don't have anything for you on that. You know that the American citizens who are being held all around the world remains one of the top priorities of this administration. When the president first came into office, that was something that he directed the State Department to do, to best oversee the welfare, the care, and bringing home of American citizens who are being held up overseas. We do have Americans there. You all know that, but I don't have anything new for you on that.
Optimistic or pessimistic signal from Lee Hyung-ho talked with the Swedish ambassador?
We don't have anything on that. We were not a part of those talks in Sweden. Alicia, do you have Alicia, I know you want to get a question in earlier rather than later. Do you have anything today?
Actually, just following up on that,
Okay.
Ambassador Yoon on CNN last week said that he had reached out to the North Koreans and urged them to release the Americans. Was that a message that was coordinated with the State Department?
Not that I'm aware of. If he did, I have no confirmation of him actually doing that. I saw part of the report that you're referencing, but I just don't have any confirmation as to whether or not he did that. We certainly hope that our people would be able to come home now.
You know, he also said that he would work for this administration again if asked. Is that at all being considered?
Not that I'm aware of. You know, we have our colleagues firmly in place, and they are doing a great job. And we are pleased to have Mark Lampert having picked up Ambassador Yoon's responsibilities, and also Susan Thornton and others taking on that role. So they're working hard on that portfolio. Hey. Yes.
Clarify something. There was a news report from MBC TV in Seoul, so South Korean media, that Pyongyang and Washington were working on an agreement to release the 3 U.S. citizens held there. So can you confirm that that report is incorrect?
Yeah, a bunch of you emailed me about that over the weekend, and I think that's just purely speculation at this point. We would love to have our American citizens brought home, a huge priority for this administration, but as far as we're concerned, there's nothing underway. We would, however, though, I want to be clear about how much we'd like our people to come home.
Sorry,
Okay.
has Mark actually taken over that job?
Not officially, but he's handling that portfolio, as is Susan Thornton. All right, Dave, hi.
Hi, the State Department Global Engagement Center has a contract with a British company, Strategic Communications Laboratories, to provide support to their the GEC stuff, the counter-propaganda effort. SCL Limited has been kicked off the Facebook platform because it's the parent company of Cambridge Analytica. Can it continue to do its work without access to the Facebook platform? And do you share the concerns that Facebook has that it's been misusing user data?
So I'm certainly aware of that report. What our relationship with that company, the Global Engagement Center, entered in a contract with Strategic Communications Laboratories. That is a division or a sister company of this Cambridge Analytica. The State Department has never worked with Cambridge Analytica, so I want to make that clear. The type of work that they have done for the Global Engagement Center is not related to social media. We do not take social media information. The way that we have engaged them is we have hired them overseas in other countries to conduct in-person interviews. Part of the portfolio that they have handled for us is the de-radicalization, essentially, of people who would be interested in joining ISIS. So the company has engaged with people who have either left the battlefield or people who might be primed for joining groups of that nature, and we've gotten information from them and talked with them about it. So it's not a social media-based thing.
Okay, and it is in the social media that they're accused of unethical practices, but they have been accused of unethical practices. Do you have any concerns about them as a company?
Look, it's not my place to weigh in on what this company is alleged to have done in a space that we have not engaged them. They've done that work with other companies, other entities that we have not been a part of. We engaged them in a very specific way to interview people who we thought were at risk as a part of our way of, retraining people's minds or getting people to not jump into terrorism.
And the contract was a year long, and it was signed in February, so it ought to have expired. Has it continued, or has it been renewed?
As far as I know, the contract was signed in 2016, in November of 2016. I believe that contract has not expired just yet. Hold on, let me see what I have in here. Yeah, so the contract was signed in November 2016. I believe they're putting together their final reports at this time, and we just always closely review our contracts as they go forward.
So in other words, this contract was signed by the previous administration.
That is correct.
How did they find those people that they were interviewing?
I don't know. And I'm not sure that we would even give the specifics, because some of this would probably fall under sensitive information about the countries in which some of these people were operating.
The reason I asked is because when I did the article about the Global Engagement Center a few weeks ago,
Okay.
they talked about a very similar project that actually used Facebook to get in touch with those people.
I'm not aware of that then.
So was this the first time?
Would that have been a different project?
I'm not aware of that. What you just referenced, that's the first I've heard of it. Okay.
So was this the first time that the State Department or a State Department branch has hired this company, SCL, or any of its
My colleagues who
subsidiaries?
predate me here at the State Department have told me that we have hired or have worked with SCL in the past.
Doing?
That I'm not sure. I think similar kinds of programs in the past.
And
I know that many other governments work with them as well. It's not just the United States government. I believe the Brits work with them and other countries.
Given the success, if you will, questionable legal or whatever that their other companies seem to have had with social media, one might wonder why social media wasn't involved. They seem to be good at doing that, whether it's...
Matt, I'm sorry. I wasn't here at the time. I don't have any information on why the decision was made back in November 2016 to engage them in this kind of fashion and not in a social media, have them work on social media.
Last thing, very briefly, can you explain how it is that it seems to, if this contract was in fact signed in November 2016, was there confusion that this contract was actually signed in February of 2017?
I don't know.
That's
I don't know.
It's on a government contracting website. Defense One found it yesterday.
Okay.
And it said...
Robert, do you have anything more on that?
I think usually in a contract there's a beginning work period, and I think that beginning of the work period was defined as February.
Okay.
But the agreement to engage that contract was made in November 2016.
So it was 3... Okay, is that typical for maybe I should get into government
I think
contracting?
I'm going to have to learn more about how government contracting works.
Without doing any work?
So your period of work began on February, so your payments began in February.
All right.
Okay. Anything more on that for you, we'll let you know. Okay? Go ahead.
Today, the French presidential spokesperson Callan reiterated that U.S. and Turkey have reached an agreement over Manbij. And he said the implementation of Manbij deal would be delayed for a couple of weeks until the new secretary takes over.
Well, that's funny because no agreement has been reached. All right. We're going to have to wrap it up shortly. Pardon me? Hi.
Earlier in your discussion with Matt about the U.S. doesn't dictate to other countries. It's the 15th anniversary of the Iraq War. And
I don't think that I said to Matt that we don't dictate to other countries.
It might have been him. I wasn't sure.
I think Matt said that.
It's hard to
Well, I
tell.
was quoting these
Yeah,
White House spokesman.
Should the U.S. apologize for regime change operations, for meddling in elections in multiple countries through many means over the years?
That is a big question. You're asking me about the entire history of the United States. Should we apologize? That's the question.
Well, let's
should we
start with the
apologize
Iraq
for
War.
our government all around the world?
No.
I think that the United States government does far more good than we ever do bad. And certain people in the United States and in other countries have a look or have the perspective that America does more harm than good. I'm the kind of American that looks at it from the other way around. We do far more good.
Most Americans are opposed to the Iraq War. Should the U.S. government apologize for things that were put out by that podium, people who are in this administration, who fabricated information to start the Iraq War?
Look, I get what you're getting at. You want to be snarky and take a look back.
No,
hold on.
I want to get real.
Okay, and take a look back
I want to get
at
real.
the past 15 years. And Iraq is certainly a country that has been through a lot. I've been to Iraq. Many of you have been to Iraq in covering what has taken place there. Okay,
I'm being anything but snarky.
Let me finish. Okay, they've faced a lot of challenges. Right now, the most significant challenge there is ISIS. and the United States remains there at the invitation of the Iraqi government to fight and take on ISIS. I want to commend the Iraqi government for something that is, for the past 15 years, that they have had a history of free and fair elections over 15 years. That is remarkable given where they were under the regime of Saddam Hussein. I recall having met Iraqis at that time, and this dates back to 2004, 2005, and certainly everyone that I had talked to, an Iraqi citizen, had had a family member that was killed in some sort of horrific fashion or disappeared and was never heard from again. I mean, that is something that as an American, when you start talking to citizens and that is their experience, that is something that's very difficult for the average American to understand, because that is simply the way of life there. The United States has a strong relationship with the government of Iraq. I'm going to look forward from this podium in this room. We have a good relationship with the government of Iraq and not going to look back at this point. Okay?
So no responsibility for the bloodshed
Go right ahead.
Or anything else?
A follow-up question on Turkey, and that is that the Turks, in addition to the question of Manbij, they've also said that talks are about to resume very shortly. Is that true? Do you have a date for talks?
We do not have anything to announce at this time.
Do you want the administration to have a public view on this vote that's supposed to happen later today on the Hill about Yemen?
So I'm certainly aware of that vote taking place as it pertains to Saudi Arabia. You know, we typically don't comment on pending legislation or voting action taking place in Congress, but after the fact, if we have something for you on that, I'll let you know.
That's not true. You take positions on there's statements of administration policy on proposed legislation on almost every single bill.
That's not true, Matt,
Yeah,
because I punt to Congress quite often when it comes to those types of things. So I would just refer you back to Congress, okay? All right, thanks, everybody. We got to go.
All right, everyone, that's going to do it for Fox News Now for today, Tuesday, March 20th. But hey, guess what? I'll see you back here tomorrow. You're taking a live look at Times Square in New York City. If you've never been, it's quite a sight. All right, everyone have a great night. See you tomorrow.